All right, let's get going. Okay, good. All right. Okay. I guess you've all heard the thing where good journalism, you tell people what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. So I'm doing that today. So here are the 4 points that we're going to cover today, with my biased opinions on them here in the beginning. But hopefully as we go through, you'll see where I came to these conclusions. So integrated products are better than standalone, and I'll tell you what those are. Portals are great, but not all are equal. If you plan to use email, I don't need to read these to you. You all have those, but these are the topics we're going to cover. Okay. Integrated products versus standalone. And by the way, I'm going to try to sort of hurry through this because I'm really open to questions. And I know that there are a lot of questions about these kinds of topics. So I want to make sure we've got time. So, but talking about integrated products versus standalone products, the problem is, and I don't know that this is actually a problem, but this is what happened with COVID in particular. A lot of us, we jumped to find a video product so that we could keep going and stay in business. And we did that, and a lot of us didn't know too much about it, and it was all new to us, and we grabbed the first thing we were told about that might have been halfway good or whatever, and we stayed with that. As we went along, and we're doing, as COVID lasted much longer than any of us thought it would, we began seeing a need for other tools that we would need. And so then we started thinking, oh, well, I need a program for e-signing, and oh, I need a program for forms, and oh, I need a program for appointment reminders, and all sorts of other things. So there was a tendency to get tools helter-skelter. However, there are many disadvantages to those, and we're going to cover those. Okay, so let's look at some of the tools that today's therapist might need. And I just made lists of these. They're in no particular order. You may or may not want all of these. It's just a list of possible tools that you might need. So the main thing here is to keep that list in mind, because from there we're going to go to what is an integrated product. Well, they go by several names. EHR, electronic health record, is one. EMR, electronic medical record, and practice management system. Those all essentially at this point in time mean exactly the same thing. I shouldn't say exactly. There's one difference, which I'll get to with the next bullet point. But basically, they mean the same thing. And essentially, it's a single product that has all, or at least almost all, of the digital tools you need. In other words, that list of tools we saw on the previous slide, you can get your EHR should have, most or all of those, at least the ones that you need. Okay, this is the part you'll probably be happiest with, a product made specifically for behavioral health. There are some products that are made with physical health therapists and hospitals and clinics and that kind of thing in mind. If you have to use one, you work in an agency or something like that, and that's what they have, great, go for it. If you don't have to use that, you're in private practice or something like I am, you're going to be happier with one that is made specifically for behavioral health. 2 other things here. It's best to get a product that comes with a portal, and some also offer mobile apps, and those are, in my opinion, ideal because you get more for your buck. Okay, so what things should we watch for with integration? Well, first of all, not all products are integrated well. Things to watch for. You shouldn't have to log into more than one product. There have been a lot of smaller practice management system companies that have sold out to larger companies. The larger companies tend to make it so that you can sign up for product A, but maybe you want a feature that product B has. Well, that's fine, but you have to log out of product A and log into product B. That's a pain, and your data isn't really integrated between those two products. So here's the other thing. If you change data in one place in the app, that same information should change everywhere. So like, for example, if I have a client or patient, whatever you call them, listed in my EHR and they get a new email address, I want to be able to, well, ideally, I want to be able to send them to the portal and let them change it so that we've all got the updated, solution there. But even if I'm having to change it myself, I want to be able to enter that data once, and every single tool within that EHR, I want it to get that same data. So if your EHR does not have that, that's not really good integration. So integration in my mind is you change something over here and it changes elsewhere. The whole thing is integrated. Okay, now some advantages. Why am I so sold on integrated products? Because actually, I mean, I know it would be easy to look at me and say, well, you have an EHR, so of course you want to try to promote that. It actually came about backwards. I went to school after I was already in private practice. I just got fascinated with web work. I have no idea why. We can never explain what things interest us. It just is. But I just got fascinated, and to the point that I decided I wanted to go back to school and get a degree in IT. So I did that, and it was like child's play. I mean, I just absolutely loved it. I still love being a therapist also, but I loved this. I loved working on the web. So when it came time for my senior project in that degree, the IT degree, I don't have time to go into the fun story on this, but the fun story is I had gotten very, shall we call it, annoyed at the practice management system I was using at the time, because they wanted to pay me, they wanted me to pay $200 for their support system because I asked them a yes or no question. And I was like, no, this is not good. So anyway, when I was doing my senior project, I thought, okay, well, I'm just gonna make something better. I think I can make a product that's better than what they have. So I went into it from that direction. I went in as, what do I think is best for therapists? What do we need? What do we want? And I went in that way. So here are the reasons. Here's the rationale. When you have an integrated product, all of your tools are automatically, or they should be automatically, encrypted and HIPAA compliant. You also have one BAA, and we're going to talk about this later, but that's a business associate agreement if you don't know what that is, for the whole thing. This can save you a lot of time, trouble, headaches, etc. And I'm going to jump down here to the bottom bullet point because these three really go together. There's also better risk management with everything being in one place, because I also do workshops on HIPAA. And when you are doing HIPAA, most of us know about the privacy policy and what we have to do with that, or some sense of it. There's also a security policy that we're also mandated to have in place. To have an adequate security policy, you have to go through every piece of software you're using and itemize it and specify it and give directions for what you're doing to keep that particular piece of software safe. If you've only got one piece of software that you're using for everything, you write that up once and you're done. You've done that for your security policy. So that's the better risk management. Okay, so that takes care of these three. Now, there's also less data entry. And the idea is, let's say, for example, I hear a lot of people that want to use standalone payment processing for their credit cards. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it is usually cheaper that way than to use whatever comes with your EHR, because your EHR at that point is a third-party vendor. So they're having to pay the company and get all of that worked out straight. Plus they had to get their product ready to do it. So they do have to charge a bit more. So there's less data entry. However, with a third-party payment thing, let's say I'm collecting my credit card payments with something over there. Okay, I can do that, but then I've got to enter that data in my credit processing, my payment processing company, and then I've got to come back and enter the same data in my EHR, because my EHR is the one that's keeping track of all of the all of my payment processing and my insurance payments and my client payments and my client statements. Your client statements are issued from your EHR. So that's just one small example of how, if you're doing everything in one program, there's less data entry. It's also typically less expensive than getting each tool separately. And this one surprises a lot of people, because they look at EHRs and they see a price tag of anywhere from, like $40 a month to $80 or $90, $100 a month, depending on what you're doing. And they say, oh, that's more than I want to do. But if you look at how much are you paying for your video program? How much are you paying for your encrypted email program? How much are you paying for the extension to go with that encrypted email program? How much are you paying for your credit card processing? And so forth and so on. If you add all of those up, EHRs almost always will end up costing less. So they typically are, I mean, added up, but typically it's less. They also save time. We've gone over that. And there's also only one program to learn and one password to remember. And this may sound like a small thing, but those of us who tend to forget passwords know that it is not. Okay, so let's move ahead to the second bullet point on our what I'm going to talk about list, which is portals. Okay, what to look for. Okay, I made this slide a long time ago, and I was looking at it before doing this presentation, and was impressed with how much the EHR universe has changed over the years. Because at the time I made this slide, it was intended to be these things are the different tasks. I just made them into little folders. And these were supposed to be the tasks that were on the therapist side. So they were on the EHR side. These were supposed to be the tasks that were available to clients. So they're on the portal side. And this was supposed to be the therapist running back and forth between the two. Now, since then, most of these actually are also on the portal side, which I think is very, very nice. For example, one of the things that we did recently with PSYBooks, and I promise not to talk about PSYBooks too much, but this feature I'm just too excited about, was you can click a button and send what we call our onboarding packet to your clients, and it will do a bunch of things. It'll set up their email account for them. It'll set up their portal account, and it also takes them to a form, an online form, where they fill out their own demographics. So you're not having to fill out client charts anymore. They're filling that out. Now you can change it, and you can also, if they send something back that you don't want in their chart, you just don't accept it. In other words, you have the final say over what actually goes in their EHR. But most of these things now can be filled out by clients also. But still, the concept is good, that there are some things only the therapist sees. There are some things only the client sees. Okay. Okay. What tools should your portal have? Now, This slide is, what do you call it, an aspirational goal. I am not aware of any behavioral health EHR that has all of these features at this time. There are some that come very close. And one thing that's important, I remember one time I was doing a demo of PSYBooks to a potential new subscriber. And, she commented, I said something like, oh, we're building this feature now or something. And she said, oh, I don't want a product that's still under construction. I just want one that's finished. And so she signed off, and that was the end of that. And, I've thought a lot about that and the education that needs to happen among clinicians, because actually, yes, you do want a product that is more or less continually under construction. You want something that is constantly on top of the not just the market, but on top of what are the CPT codes that you need to use? What are the diagnosis codes that you need to use? Have they changed? If so, we need to change things on our end. I have also talked to several therapists who have signed up with dead end products, ones that are no longer being maintained, and that they are not getting the new CPT codes and the new diagnostic codes and things like that. And so, they're trying to jump ship now and find products that are staying up with time. But anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but the point is, these are the kinds of tools you want to look for in your portal. Now, since I said I'm not aware of any products that have all of these, so you might say, well, which ones are most important to have? Well, we're going to talk about email and text separately in this presentation, so I won't go into those now, but those are, in my mind, must-haves. Everything else, it's sort of up to you as to which things you feel are most important, what things are on your must-have list. So, but that's a good list for you to go by. Okay. Okay. That EHR portals vary considerably, so it's wise to shop around. These days, many therapists, probably most therapists, are beginning to realize that, yes, they want portals. As a result, some EHRs that don't really have portals are beginning to advertise that they do, because it's a good marketing asset for them. So, I would be cautious about that. If you first of all, I would try out a product before you purchase. I know there are some products that want you to sign up a year ahead of time. Absolutely not. There's too much that can change in a year, and I wouldn't want to get locked into something like that for a year. But look at it and see if it really has the tools that you need. The main function of a portal should be as a communication hub between you and your patients. Okay. All right. This applies to portals. It also applies to overall record retention. So if you're using any kind of EHR or portal, or even if you're using online file storage with a standalone company, you need to know how long do they keep your data. The reason is because this kind of data is considered part of the patient's medical record. So we are ethically mandated, and I don't care what your discipline is, we're ethically mandated to keep records for X amount of years. It varies according to state, I think, but and so we must have that data. So if you're with a company that doesn't keep it, that ditches it after so many years, then that's not a good company to be with. You also want to know, can you take your data with you if you leave? If you decide you want to leave that product and change to a different one, can you get the data from the old one? I would not sign up with a product where I couldn't do that. The other thing is, if you leave and come back, will your data still be there? I know some companies if a subscriber deactivates their account for whatever reason, the vendor, the EHR product owner, has their program set to automatically destroy that account after X amount of time. And usually it's a month or 2 or 3, something like that, not a long amount of time. So the problem with that, there's nothing really wrong with that, and I understand it because data takes up storage on a server, and we, the EHR vendor, has to pay for that storage. So I understand not wanting to keep it. But I've had subscribers that have left PSYBooks and thought they found something better. And then we keep all data. We don't destroy records. And I've had people leave and think they found something better and then come back and say, no, I like you better. Can I come back? And we say, of course. And we give them a new password, but they can sign in and all of their old data is right where they left it. So they can just pick up from there. So those are questions to ask. Okay, now email and texting. And this is probably one of the most important things I feel like I need to talk about today, because there is tremendous misunderstanding about this, tremendous. Okay. First of all, we are not required to email and or text with clients at all. Now, the thing about it is, if we decide that we do not want to email and or text, that all needs to be spelled out in our telehealth informed consent. And, you know, technically, and I'm not saying I would be this rigid about it, but if I were in charge, but I'm not. But technically, if you email once with a client or text once with them, then you've broken your own policy, and that means that yes, you're emailing and texting. To me, that's a bit over the top, but some people go that far with it. But the thing is, if you decide you do want to email and or text, then any and all of that information, those original texts and emails, are considered part of that person's medical record. That means that you're required to keep all of those emails and texts in their original form. This is important, in their original form for the required number of years. Now, I've had people ask me, well, I'm taking pictures of the emails on my phone, and then I'm emailing them to myself. Doesn't that work? Well, that didn't work for a whole lot of reasons. First of all, it doesn't work because the email connection between your phone and wherever else you're saving them is not secure. So you've risked the data in sending it to yourself. But the other thing is, even if you have something set up so that that connection is secure and you can email it to yourself and it's all encrypted and all like that, I think by this point in time, we all realize that both email documents, because I've also had people say, well, I don't take pictures, but I copy the text and I put it in a Word doc and I save the Word doc in my EHR. That doesn't work either. The reason is because I think we're all aware by this point in our digital history how easy it is to alter both documents and photographs. It is very easy for people who know how to do that. It's very, very easy to do that. So those would not be considered the original form. You really need the original form in that platform, and that's what those are. Okay, now the other part. It also means that you're responsible for providing secure email and text. I was looking ahead to see which slide comes next because I'm not sure. I've got a story I want to tell, and I'm not sure if I want to tell it now or later. Let's go ahead. I may want to tell it later. A recent study shows that email, this was shocking to me when I found this. Email is one of the top 2 types of hacking and IT breaches listed in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights Breach Portal. That's the name of it. It's one of those humongous legal names. Now, some people say, well, okay, well, it's one of the top 2. What's the top one? The top one are network servers, which are things that hospitals and clinics and university systems, that kind of thing, would have. That would not apply to those of us in private practice. So for those of us in private practice, well, I didn't tell you this part. The worst offenders for email breaches, coming in at a stunning 82%, are healthcare providers like us. We're it. And if you take off the network servers, that's the top breach. That means the very worst kind of email breach is us. Okay, now, okay, that just reiterates what I just said. The most likely reasons for this are, some of us are just using regular unencrypted email. When I've gone through that HHS database that I referenced a couple of pages ago, and you can drill down in that and read about specific breaches that have been reported. And I've done that for a few of them, and some of the ones that have email breaches. And they're saying things like, provider was using Gmail, whatever, and provider was using Yahoo, provider was using Outlook, they're common email carriers that we're used to using, but they are not safe, they're not encrypted. Some of us think we're using encrypted email, but it's not as safe as we think. Now, this is for those of you, some of you may have heard, there's some people are jumping on the Google Workspace bandwagon and saying, well, their email is good. Their email is only safe if you attach something to it like PSYBooks, and PSYBooks is expensive. You can get an EHR with encrypted email a lot cheaper than you can get Google Workspace and PSYBooks, especially if you have a group practice with more than one practitioner that you would need to buy PSYBooks for. So we're going to talk briefly, and I can do whole lectures on types of encryption. So this is, I've drilled it down into a little thing here that we're not going to go in detail, but you'll have it in your slides for any of you that might be interested in going into it farther. It's the reason why something like Google Workspace is not encrypted 100% end to end is because they use a type of encryption called TLS, which stands for Transport Layer Security. Now, the appeal of TLS and the reason Google decided to use it is that it's very user-friendly. You don't have to log in. There's nothing to log in. You signed up for the product, you're using their product, you send an email, and boom, there it goes. Okay, the problem with it is that it's potentially hackable. It's hackable, I think, about 15 to 20% of the time. Oh, yeah, we get that on the next slide. And the problem is on the recipient's end. In other words, you as the sender of that email have no control over whether it's potentially hackable or not. It's out of your hands. It's just gone, and you're taking your best guess that it's going to be okay. Now, the other kind of encryption, and this would be the kind of encryption that EHRs have. It's virtually unhackable. I want to say it is unhackable, and there's an article that some people who are much geekier than I am did the math and decided it would take 6.4 quadrillion years to break this kind of encryption. So who knows? But I don't know. But that's from an article I read. So in other words, it is very safe. It's the ultimate in safety. The disadvantage is that you have to log in. There are two basic types of encryption. One is the kind that most EHR portals have, where you have to, each party has to log in each time. The other, each party still has to log in, but they have to know a predetermined password, and that's the kind that Hushmail has. Okay, so, all right, we probably have already talked about this. Yeah, I've covered all of this at various points in what I just said, so don't need to go over that. So the takeaway from all of this is that the type of encryption offered by EHR portals is generally a better option for email when you're emailing with clients or about them, like if you're emailing with colleagues about a shared client or patient. Okay, now, this can get confusing, so I want to make a clear break here. We've been talking about encryption and email. Now we're going to talk about another whole problem with email. So let's go on here. And that is whether the messages are threaded or not. Again, being able to offer HIPAA compliant email is very attractive to an EHR vendor. Everyone wants to say, yes, we've got encrypted email. The thing is, and they may, they may, but the other thing we're required to do is to keep these records as part of the medical record, like we've discussed, for X number of years. And what we're required to keep is the entire thread. In other words, we don't only need what the client sent to us, we also need how we responded to that and how they responded to our response and so forth. We need all of that in a thread kept in, just like regular email systems have. Very few products actually have that. I will say, I wanted that from the outset with PSYBooks. It took us, we probably spent a year or more just building our email system, where a simple messaging system can be built in a handful of months. So that's the difference in what's happened there. Okay, so I wanted to say one that I never got a chance to say what I was going to say earlier, so I want to come back to that. In terms of encryption, what we're required to offer, I've heard some people say, oh, I can just write a notice that says to my clients, ask my clients if they're willing to waive HIPAA compliant email. And if they all sign it, then I'm golden, right? That is not true. That is absolutely 100% not true. The opposite is true. We are required to provide we're not actually, we're required to provide a secure email system for all of our patients. Now, if we have a patient or two that says, I can't figure this out, I don't want to use your portal, can we please just use my regular Yahoo account? Okay, the privacy policy does say that for that person or those people, we are supposed to try to accommodate them. This is part of like a reasonable accommodation. However, at that point, you whip out your release form that says that you normally offer X encrypted email, blah, 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 but this person requested blah, blah. And so you are making this exception for them and they are waiving all rights and blah, 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 and you, whatever your form says around that. So it's just backwards. We're supposed to require, we're supposed to offer a secure system. Okay, now what do we have? What do we have here? Okay, and back to the threaded messages. There's another part here. Some companies also only offer to keep these messages for a relatively short period of time. In other words, they're not keeping them for as long as is needed to maintain records, to maintain the medical record. So, and I put they may meet the encryption criteria, that other stuff we talked about, but that's only half of the story. We need to maintain the medical record. Okay, so summary options. So what do you do about email and texting? Oh, and I should also say everything I said about email also applies to texting. The rules are the same, so there's no difference. So your options are get standalone email and or texting programs to supplement your EHR. If you currently have an EHR that you are in love with and you don't want to change, and or if you work for an agency that has an EHR that you're required to use and you have no choice over it, but you can see that it's not really cutting the mustard, you can get, this would be something like PSYBooks. There are probably similar programs for texting. I don't know what they are, so my knowledge stops there. But with email, it would be PSYBooks. So you can get those standalone programs to make sure that what you're sending out in your EHR is 100% encrypted. Or you can get an EHR that offers full threaded email and texting programs where you have control over how long the record is maintained. That to me makes the most sense if you're going to text or email. Or you do have the option of saying, this is too hard. I ain't going there. I'm not doing that, not doing any of it. We do have that choice. Just, make sure you put it in your telehealth informed consent. Okay, so what do patients think about portals? It's been interesting for me as a presenter, trying to keep track of the time. It's been interesting for me as a presenter to watch trends change over time. When I first started doing presentations similar to this, probably, 10 years ago or something, there was a lot of pushback against portals. And I was seeing it in my own practice. I would tell my patients, well, I've got this portal, I'd like you to sign up for it. And they would say, oh, that's a pain, blah, 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 blah. So when I would do these presentations, I would be trying to convince people about portals. That is no longer the case. Everything has shifted. And now there's a recent study, it's given for you down here. 93% of respondents said they prefer doctors who respond to email. That's the study here. You can read that. Okay, now, this is one of my favorite stories of all. I love this story. And it happened with one of my own patients. I had a woman call me and said that she was trying out therapists, which I always think is a good thing to do. It's too big of an investment to just take the first therapist you see. You don't want to do that. So she was trying out therapists, and she said she had 3 that she had made appointments with. They passed muster just on the phone part of it, and so she had made appointments with them, and so she came for her appointment. And she told me that I was the second person she was seeing, and she had one more person that she wanted to see, and she would make her decision after that. And I said, that's fine. I am delighted that you're checking out. It's really important. So I'm really glad you're doing this and whatever. So we had our session, and I thought it went very, very well. Sometimes you can just tell when you click with someone, and I really felt like, she and I click. This is a good match. And so at the end of the session, she said, actually, if you don't mind, she said, I think I'd like to just say that I want to go with you and cancel that 3rd appointment. And I said, no, I don't mind at all. I said, it feels like a good match to me too. So I would be in support of that decision. And so we agreed, and we were looking for a time to meet and everything. And then she sort of started giggling, and she said, you want to know why I really chose you? And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, because I'm such a good therapist, or, all the kinds of things that we like to inflate our egos with. but I maintained my composure, and I said, yes, I'd really like to know. And she said, it's because you have a portal. And I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned because I was used to getting pushback about my portal. And she went on, and what she said, the rest of the story is those of us, probably all of you who know about correlational data will understand why this does not hold, her reasoning does not hold water. But still, it was interesting for and she did not know, by the way, that I had built the portal that she had signed into. She didn't know that. She only knew me as a therapist. And so she went on and she said, yeah, she said, all of my physical health therapists, all of my doctors, they all have portals. And she said, if I see a therapist without a portal, they don't look as professional to me. And she said, I just don't trust them as much. She said, because I have to think that if they're not up to date with the latest technology and methodology, maybe they're also not up to date with the latest treatment methods. Now, that's the correlational piece of this. That is not true at all. Some of the therapists I revere the most highly are still paper pencil folks. So I don't agree with that assessment. However, I still think it's valuable to know in terms of how we're perceived and how patients perceive us. And I will say that I am a very laid back, casual kind of therapist. I don't remember what I had on that day, but chances are it was a t-shirt. I mean, today I'm wearing a t-shirt, and I don't. So she was only basing it on my portal made me look more professional. I'm sure it was nothing about my office or my dress, my attire. My portal made me look professional. So, all right. So, all right, so this is just a takeaway summary slide on that. EHRs with portals with 100% end-to-end encryption is your best option. Okay, now video products. We're doing fine because this part is not that long, believe it or not. Okay, there are some concepts in here that also can get embroiled, so I'll spell them out for you. When COVID first began and we had the emergency whatever that's called, the emergency leeway, I don't know what it's called. We were, and I think still are, allowed to use video products that are not encrypted. I think that was great in the beginning because the whole point was to get everyone up and running as soon as possible and to hopefully contain the COVID virus, which of course we did not, but still we tried. However, using a non-encrypted video product is a bit like broadcasting sessions to the public. And even the emergency response document acknowledges this risk, and you can read that quote if you want. But basically the idea is, if you are still using a non-encrypted video product, you're at risk for a hacker finding that session. Even if it's not recorded, they can find it live time. Recording it on their screen, it's very easy to do a screen recording, Windows and Mac and all that. It's built into that software. Now you just click a few buttons and you're recording the screen. And they could put our therapy sessions online. They could post them online. I don't want to risk my sessions that way. So for that reason, I would say definitely do not use a non-encrypted video product at this point in time. Okay, now there's another point here, and I debated about whether to even talk to you about this because it gets tricky. But some of you may see it, and so I want you to understand what it means. Even though, okay, assume the public health emergency is gone, which I hope it will be someday. without that in place, we are required to use encrypted video products. And of course, I'm saying use encrypted video products now. Okay. However, because of a thing called the conduit exception, even though we're required to use encrypted products, we are not required to get business associate agreements with our video software companies, as long as they do not store or have access to our data. Now, I've seen some instances where a company will say, well, we only have access to the data when we're transferring it from here to here. We don't, as a general rule. And it's like, nope, this is where they will get picky down to the little nits with you on this. So, you know, if at one point in time, the employees of that company can view your session, then that is considered that you would not have the conduit exception. Okay, frankly, I don't care about the conduit exception because I still think we need business associate agreements. And here's why. We're going to go over that now. Okay, whereas encryption is more about security, whether they can, whether a hacker can get our data. The BAA is more about privacy. And privacy is basic, or the BAA is basically, it does two things. It's the software company's legal contract with you about how they're going to manage your client data. And what we hope, and in most cases this is true, is that the BAA will tell us, will assure us that that company will not sell our data or will not use it in their marketing or will not use it wherever else. And that's what we hope for. So it gives us that assurance that the company itself is not going to do that. Without a BAA, you don't have that assurance. You may have a conduit exception thing, but you don't have that assurance. So the company could sell your client data to whomever they wanted. Okay, the other thing a BAA does, it puts the company on the breach, on the hook, sorry, if there is a breach that involves their software. So for example, let's take, let's take Zoom for Healthcare. Okay, Zoom for Healthcare will give you a BAA. That means that if there's a breach, then and some of your data is exposed, Zoom is responsible for reporting that breach, paying whatever fines there are. They will be the ones listed on that HHS database that I referenced earlier, and so forth and so on. Now, that doesn't happen often, that happens, but it will ensure, if nothing else, if the company themselves knows that they're going to have to be responsible for any breaches, it's going to make sure they do a better job of security overall. So my short story is that you want to get a BAA with all your software, and you want to make sure the BAA states that they agree not to sell your data, because technically, you know, it took me several years to actually think through this. I was just telling people a BAA means that they won't sell your data. And then I thought, wait a minute, the BAA, we're signing that it says whatever they say it says. And so technically, if the BAA says, oh, we're going to sell your data to this and this and this, and you just signed it, then, you know, you've given them permission to do that. So I would say, and I don't want to read a full BAA either, and I don't, but I would at least skim it, any BAA you get, to make sure it says what you need it to say. Okay, now, so that covers it in terms of encryption and also BAAs. Now, let's talk about the types of video products, and there are two. There's what I would call a native app, which is something like Zoom, Secure Video, VC, and some EHRs will have this. Like PSYBooks has Secure Video, so we have a native app. WebRTC is a whole different technology for doing video. It's cheaper, much cheaper to build because it works out of the browser. It's not a standalone app. And examples of that would be DoxyMe and some EHRs. The EHRs, the video products that come with both Simple Practice and Therapy Notes are both WebRTC products. So which is better? Well, it depends on your needs and what you want. The quality and stability of a native app is usually better than with a WebRTC app. However, are WebRTC apps bad? No, usually they're pretty okay. So you know, I would say they're good enough most of the time. Now, this is the clincher here, the number of participants. With native apps, they can accommodate 100 or more users at a time. With WebRTC apps, they can accommodate 2 to 4. So if you're doing groups or want to do webinars or things like that, you would have to go with a native app. Is there a download with a native app product? Yes, there is, because there's an actual application that you are downloading. With a WebRTC app, no, there is not, because it plays out of your browser, Chrome or Firefox or Safari, you know, those are the big ones. Okay, the cost, and this is also important to some people, but not others. Native apps are usually more expensive than WebRTC apps. Okay, so summary slide. All right, this is okay, this is that last slide where I'm gonna do the part where I say I tell you what I told you. Okay, so basically choose an integrated product if at all possible, blah, 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 blah. Make sure your EHR includes a portal. If you plan to email and or text with clients, make sure your portal supports threaded versions of both so you can email and text within the portal. Otherwise, you will need to get a separate email product like Hushmail or Google Workspace and PSYBooks or something like that. EHRs with companion mobile apps are a nice plus. Get an EHR that has a strong video program included so that your video is integrated along with everything else. Okay, that's it for me. So let's go to questions. Okay, I'm looking at the questions. Judith asked earlier. Okay, yes, you will get a copy of the slide deck. Zoom is encrypted. The thing with Zoom is for a long time, it didn't offer a BAA except for a version that cost $200. But with the BAA, Zoom for Healthcare is perfectly fine. Okay, any other questions? Do I have recommendations for EHR platforms? Well, yes. My top 3, to be honest, I'll give you 3 so that it doesn't sound like I'm just pushing PSYBooks. But I see the top 3 as being PSYBooks, Simple Practice, and Therapy Notes. Now, of those 3, we all have strengths and weaknesses. There is no perfect product. So it's a matter of trying all of them, or at least talking with representatives from all of them and figuring out which you like best. But those are my top 3. I see those as being tough. Now, okay, what portals give you the most for your money? I will say those top 3 were all in about the same price range. Simple Practice has recently bumped their pricing up quite a bit. So they are currently the most expensive of the 3. I think Therapy Notes and PSYBooks are still about the same. Now, the difference being Therapy Notes does not have the encrypted email or texting. So if you get Therapy Notes, you will have to get like Hushmail or Google Workspace and PSYBooks. You will have to get an add-on email product and also a texting product. if you do those things. If you don't, you're fine. Okay. How do I know if my phone and texts are encrypted? That's a very good question. And I'm not sure I know the answer to it. I can say this, the problem with phone for texts, these days, I believe that both Apple and Android, and I'm not sure about Google, but probably have encryption programs built into their software. I think I'm right on that. Others may know about that. So if you're using that, it is possible to encrypt your phone and save those. The problem with that is you still need to be able to save those texts as part of the client's medical record. And I just personally, I'm not aware of a way to do that on a phone. And especially since I usually get a new phone more than every 7 years or 10 years, which is how long I have to keep my client records. And so then, you know, it's a whole process of transferring over and encrypting to the new one and all of that. I don't think it's a risk worth taking, but others may, because I don't feel like I'm an expert on phones and how that works. So, okay, let me just go ahead. Pros and cons of my top 3 recommendations. Okay, pros for PSYBooks. We are the only one that has the encrypted email and texting built in, and it's free. It comes with your subscription. So I see that as a huge plus, because it's also, it keeps all of their emails and texts right there in the same program with everything else. You're not having to move things. You're not having to look into places for things. It's all in one place. So that's a big plus of ours. A con for, I think a big con for Simple Practice at this point is their price. Plus, they don't have the built-in texting or emails. So with both Simple Practice and Therapy Notes, you're going to have to get the email or texting add-ons. Now, pros, Simple Practice, I haven't seen it for myself, but I hear that they currently have a nice customizable form feature. PSYBooks is building that, and it should launch in the next couple of months, but I can't tell you right now today that we have that. And I think that is a super, super, super product. I don't know about Simple Practices. Ours, you'll even be able to do, it doesn't have to be just forms. If you like mood trackers and things like that, you can build them for your clients and have them return them to you as often as they want to. You can have them keep track dietary logs. Whatever your particular niche is, you can build a form for it. You can put images on your form. You can make it into a graphic, thing if that's your thing that you like to do. So it's going to be just a huge fun feature. But we don't have it right this minute, so I can't speak to that now. And I hear that Simple Practice does. So that would be a pro for them. Another thing that PSYBooks does not have at this point that we're going to be adding soon is we have integrated credit card processing. We don't have that in our portal at this point. I think on that list in the beginning when I said portal should have these, the only one that PSYBooks does not have is we don't have a tab for payment processing yet. It's coming, but we don't have it yet. So what does that mean? It means that the client has to give you their credit card information. Then you enter it once in the program, and then you never have to enter it again. But they can't enter it themselves. We don't have that. Pros and cons. Okay, top 3. Okay, that's enough to get you started. I really think Therapy Notes is the weakest of the 3, to be honest, but I don't know. Okay, I use Doxy.me and don't do my own billing. Would getting And please spell PSYBooks. PSYBooks is PSY, like psychologist or something like that. PSYBooks. It's down here at the bottom of this slide. So DoxyMe, use your own billing. Would getting Hushmail be sufficient? I think if the only other tool you need with your clients is email, then I would say yes. Hushmail is a perfectly fine product. There's nothing wrong with it. And it does have the SSL encryption. If you are using any other products at all, you might want to consider something larger than that, because otherwise, if you start with Hushmail, you've got some of your client records there, and then you switch to something else and you've got some else. Okay, let me go ahead. Okay, do I know if Simple Practice has the email and text? They do not. DoxyMe is a fine product. The thing about that, the question is, how do you feel about DoxyMe? It's a fine product. It's that some people, well, I have noticed there seem to be a lot of people leaving Doxy right now because of lack of support. So I don't really know about that. And some people say that it's not as clear. It should be. It's a WebRTC product. It was one of the earlier ones. It should be clear. Keep in mind, when you're doing video, you've got everything going on your end that can take bandwidth. You've also, excuse me, got everything going on the client's end that can take bandwidth. So if the client does not have a good internet connection, they are not going to have a satisfactory video experience, no matter what you use, even if you use something like Secure Video or Zoom or something like that. Okay. The email and texting functions on PSYBooks user-friendly. I have to say 80%. Here's the thing: when you're building software, you start off and you build a product. Like I told you, our email took about a year to build, and you build a product and you build it with the best technology that you're aware of available at that time. Okay, so that's what we did with our email product. Okay, well, we built our email product before drag and drop, that wonderful function where we just, drag something over and there it is. So our email now, you can move like folders from one folder to another folder, and you can have stacked folders and client folders and all like that. And you can have old clients and new clients. I've got mine all set up, but you have to do it with clicks. So you have to click the email and then move it and, whatever. We will go back and change that at some point because it drives me crazy when I have to do that. Now, the reason I'm not saying we're going to jump right in tomorrow and start redoing that, changing it to drag and drop, is because you don't have to do that very often. Mostly your email messages, you just send them and you receive them and you reply, and it's like any other normal email program. And so it is very user-friendly. That part of it is very user-friendly. But if you need to start moving messages from one folder to another, you're going to have to click a little bit. So it's not as user-friendly as I would like it to be.
I think we have time for one more question.
All right, let's see what we got. A demo, go to PSYBooks.com, and PSYBooks has a place to keep notes. Yes. Google Workspace. All right. Okay. There are a lot of problems with Google Workspace, and I know that people are trying to use that now as an EHR. Frankly, I wouldn't. Could I write what down? Well, anyway, you said one more question. I don't recommend using Google Workspace. It's too scattered. Things are all over the place. Okay, I'm supposed to be out of here. So Kelsey, turn it back over to you. But thank you all very much for attending.
Thank you for attending, everyone. The recording will be shared with you later this week. And we'll share some links to the resources and a place where you guys can keep asking questions and collaborate on all of this information. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't mind on a message board, if you have a message board set up, I'll be happy to jump in there. Just make sure I have the link and I'll answer more questions there. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.